Hi, I'm Dan Sweeney, the Director of the Institute for Enterprise Ethics at the Daniels College of Business here on the University of Denver campus. This is the second in a series of interviews we're doing with selected members of the Daniels College of Business faculty on topics that are of current interest in the area of enterprise ethics. The topic today is the ethics of executive compensation. On Sunday, June 17th, the New York Times published their annual report on the compensation of the 200 highest paid CEOs in the United States. The median number for these 200 executives was $14.5 million, and that's about a 5% increase from last year. The New York Times also, in the preceding April, published a report on the the CEO compensation of the 100 largest corporations in the UK, and that showed very similar levels and trends. So we've got the numbers, and now we're waiting for the pundits to come out with complaints and criticisms of money grubbing and greed, and on the other side, defenses in the manner of, well, it's just a natural result of a free enterprise system. So the Institute has been wanting to kind of shed some light on this issue. So we've invited two experts in the areas of business ethics and executive compensation to help us understand what's going on here. Don Mayer is a professor in residence in the Department of Business Ethics and Legal Studies at the Daniels College of Business. Don has extensive experience in teaching and research at the university level. He also has experience in the private sector and the military sector as a practicing attorney. Don's expertise is in the areas of business ethics, corporate social responsibility, and ethics in global capitalism. Don, thanks for joining us this morning.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
John Balkcom is a current and former independent director of a variety of private and public corporations. He is also President Emeritus of St. John's College in Santa Fe. However, John spent the majority of his career as a consultant to major U.S. corporations, advising them and their boards on issues of executive compensation. John, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning. Well, guys, I think we've got a good counterpoint here, two vantage points from which to look at this issue of ethics of executive compensation. So let's get on with it.
Sounds good.
Good.
Gentlemen, the AFL-CIO, as they do every year, came out with their review of executive compensation and the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and pegged the number, the median number, at about $13 million, about a 14% increase over the previous year. They also reported that since 1980, the ratio of the median CEO compensation to the median average worker compensation grew from 40 times to 380 times. So what's going on here? I mean, how come this has grown so much over this past 30 years?
Several things going on in my mind. Certainly, executive compensation consultants have had a lot to do with this, have played a hand in the ratcheting up in compensation over time at the request of their clients. No question that the executive recruiting game, if you will, has also had a role in that as major companies have competed for talent, and talent that is demonstrably better at creating value, especially in large corporations. And I would even speculate, and some of the academics who've studied this over the years have suggested that some CEOs, in a sense, regard themselves as being in a tournament. And this is one of the ways of gauging who's winning the tournament, what they take home. And Probably one of the underlying factors that gets less attention is that equity has gone from being, that is ownership in the company or options in the company, has gone from being a modest part of compensation in the 50s to a substantial part of compensation in the 90s and now the 2000s. So all of those together have helped to inflate executive compensation and get to a ratio that's 380 to 1 against workers' compensation.
Yeah. Don, what do you think?
Well, I like John's tournament idea. From what I've read, there is a competition going on, and of course the CEOs are very competitive, and they'd better be. Right? We want that. But in 1992, the SEC decided to require enhanced disclosure of these pay packages. And so once these folks could see what everybody else was getting, it became more like a competition, more like a tournament. So people judge their compensation in relative terms. If I'm making more than you are, I feel good about myself. If I'm making less than John, I want what he's got. I mean, that's just human nature. And Dan Ariely's studies have shown at MIT and at Duke that people judge their pay in relative terms, right?
So guys, well, there's one word I didn't hear in that conversation, and that's greed. I read that in all the op-eds and all the editorials and most of the reportage on these issues of executive compensation, but it didn't come up. So is it not all about greed?
My experience of these chief executives is they're pretty comfortable people in terms of their financial well-being. And I rarely hear that I want another 10 million or another 100 million. More, as I think Don said, it's more about competition. I see that you're making 20 million, I want to make 25 million. I want to win that contest in some sense. So I don't see a big element of greed in this, and in particular don't see that if we address the greed component, that's going to solve this problem.
We might address it to some extent. I think in the popular conception, an executive that gets a big bonus and takes risks and loses money for the company and still gets a big golden parachute and all kinds of other benefits, how would you take that unless you had a little bit of greed inside of you, and the public would perceive that as, well, this is a person who's taking what they don't deserve. Generally, I think it's more like these people feel competent, they feel stressed, they feel very responsible, they feel that they're entitled, and in most cases they really are, because those are tough jobs. I think it's when the public sees people taking something that is not deserved that it's the public saying greed, and I think if you are in fact greedy, you probably don't even know it.
This is an excellent point. I think the competition is not, in fact, so much that I want to make more than you do. I want my company to outperform your company. And then I want the benefits of that if I, in fact, outperform you. Yeah. That's the real competition.
That's helpful.